Hey everyone out there, how are you doing? This is Tim Laskus, and you're listening to, yes, the Tim Laskus Show, episode 010. And today's guest is Josh Spodek. This guy is amazing. He's an astrophysicist turned media whiz. He's a professor at NYU. He's a columnist at Inc. He holds 5 Ivy League degrees. Yes, 5. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one of those is a PhD in astrophysics and an MBA from Columbia. He also holds 6 patents. What has this guy not done? And man, as smart as he is, he's actually pretty down to earth. And you want to stay tuned because I just might make him cry. I would never do it on purpose. I'm just saying. So stay tuned.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests. Entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Welcome everyone to the Tim Laskus Show. I am super excited today to have Josh Spodek as my guest today. Josh, thank you for joining me today.
Glad to be here.
Earlier, you were telling me about cold showers and burpees. I'm sure the audience would love to hear about that, and they may be scratching their head going, what? Cold showers and burpees? Maybe you can expand on that.
Well, you were asking me, what brought it up was you asked me what I do besides the work stuff. And I said, it's every single day for the past 7 years, I've done, actually, this is my 7th year. Every morning when I wake up, I do burpees. Every evening before I go to sleep, I do burpees. And every day I write on my blog. I'm up at around 2,500 blog posts, 2,400 something.
Wow.
And every 4th day, I take a cold shower. And all of these things are things that I've heard about from various places. And when I did them, I realized they made my life better. I mean, a cold shower is definitely not comfortable, and burpees are hard.
Mm-hmm.
But after you finish them, you feel really good. And, in a different time, people had 9-to-5 jobs or some structure that was imposed on them, and that kept their life a certain order to their life. And today I don't live with that life. I don't have someone telling me where I have to be at a certain time. And to me, to have that structure gives me the freedom to not worry about lots of things like how healthy I am and am I in shape and things like that, which to me, that's really fundamental stuff.
Mm-hmm. So you
And
build it into your...
I can't help.
Yeah.
I can't help but share that earlier this week, Tim Ferriss on his blog, his guest was the person who inspired me to originally do burpees. And the guy, it was in a New York Times article that someone asked a bunch of fitness experts, what, if you could pick one best exercise, what would it be? And the guy said, the burpee. And I said, all right, me and a friend decided to do 10 burpees a day for a while.
Uh-huh.
And while I was doing them, I thought, this is so good. I got to keep doing this. Yes, it's painful. Yes, it's hard. But the feeling afterward is so good. And so he's on Tim Ferriss, and he goes, by the way, they're talking about burpees. And he goes, by the way, this guy got in touch with me. He's got a PhD in physics, and he's an MBA, and he's been doing burpees every day for the past 5 years. And so I get these emails from people saying, hey, Josh, you're on Tim Ferriss.
Wow. That must have been
that was really
huge shock. And I'm sure you enjoyed hearing that and getting that feedback. That's incredible. Now
yeah, it is really, yeah.
The friend that you started doing the burpee challenge probably in the beginning, is he still doing them? Or did he drop off?
He hasn't kept up as much. He did them for a while, and I don't think he's absolutely given up on them, but he doesn't do them every single day. Something about being a father of 4 kids.
Oh, okay. So he's got other obligations. Well,
Yeah.
tell me you don't do burpees right after breakfast.
I do them before breakfast.
Yeah, that's probably good. Yeah, I think I tried them one time after breakfast, and not a good it didn't work out so well. So, well, that's incredible. When you were talking about the cold showers, I heard a couple of interviews with Wim Hof. I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know him. I know some people who've tried to do his stuff.
Yeah, he is just incredible, and apparently has some researchers that are looking into his claims of the impact of cold water I guess cold water therapy, you may call it, for people with all sorts of either mental health or physical ailments. And I mean, I don't know how many world records he has. He's swimming under ice and climbing Mount Everest with no clothes on, and I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Well, I can't speak to the medical research, but I can tell you, when you finish a cold shower, and it's January in New York City right now, so it was 47 something degrees. I bought a thermometer. And when you finish a cold shower, you are invigorated. You are refreshed.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get in. I can't believe I do it sometimes, but it's you get so much out of it. No one who doesn't get it gets it, but everyone who gets it gets it. I can't explain it.
I've tried it a couple times. I'll run the hot shower, really, really hot, and then I'll get up courage and I'll start cranking. I'll crank that baby all the way down to cold, and then as it starts turning cold, I have my whole body under there. But then I start backing out, and all I can hold in there is my face, and that's about all I can do. And then I'm just a wimp, and I turn it back to hot real quick. So I've tried that a couple times, but it is hard. I try to do the breathing and try to relax myself to stay in there, but I just can't force my body to stay under that cold water. It just puts me into a shock. But
it's not relax. I don't find it relaxing. It's something different. It's a lot of people say you must have a lot of discipline to do it, and it's not. It's the other way around. It's that doing these habits gives you discipline. I realized that it's like saying, when I was a kid growing up, I would see strong people going to the gym, and I think, oh, you got to have big muscles to go to the gym. But it's not, right? It's going to the gym gives you big muscles. So if you want discipline, you have to do stuff. For me, that's one of the main benefits of it is to develop these skills: diligence, discipline. Doing what you say you will do.
Yep. Absolutely. I could probably go on all day talking about cold showers, and maybe we can have a separate podcast on that. But let's move on into your area of expertise and what you do professionally. I know I read somewhere you had about 917 degrees. Is that true?
Well, I've 5 Ivy League degrees if you count them all. And but that was one of the big things I do is I learned a lot through lecture and case study and reading papers and writing papers, which I call traditional academic background. And it's great. It's intellectually challenging, but what I do is I teach leadership and entrepreneurship, and these are things that are more social and emotional. I mean, it's useful to have information, but leadership is generally, a leader is more effective by their social and emotional skills. And I would say that a lot of my background, a lot of my education, intellectually challenging, but socially and emotionally passive. And what I have done over the past few years is create courses that are socially and emotionally active. And, when you have a professor saying, sit here in the seat, do what you're supposed to, you can pick a major, but once you pick a major, you got to do, you have a limited choice of classes. That's teaching. If you look at the behavior that it's teaching compliance.
Yes.
And compliance is almost the opposite of leadership. It's followership. And I looked, the first I heard about leadership, that you could take classes in it, that you didn't have to be born the way you were. That was in business school. And it was after that, I knew what to do, but I didn't know how to do it. I wasn't, have you ever had a situation where you walk into, I don't know, a negotiation with someone and some sort of leadership thing, maybe trying to resolve a conflict. And before you walk in, you're thinking, I know I'm going to say this and they're going to say that, and I'm going to say this and they're going to say that, and it's going to come out great.
Right.
And then you walk in, and maybe for me, it's when I make eye contact and I start actually talking to the person, like all that goes out the window, and it's as if I never learned anything.
Right.
And what's inspired me all this time is to learn that there are other ways of teaching besides traditional academic learning that's socially and emotionally active. And so the short answer to your question is I teach experiential, active, project-based courses in leadership and entrepreneurship.
Right. And I think that's
sales.
what happens is when, you learn something in the textbook theory or, application, and then you get into the real world and it doesn't quite work that way. And then you mentioned, going into a room with someone, and as soon as you have eye contact, it changes everything. And then there is that emotion that's in the room, and it tends to override everything else, and things get thrown out the window. And so, I think people get really lost. And it's the same thing in in therapy with clients as a psychologist. You can learn all textbook theories. They say this, you say that, but there's more to that. And there's also that when you have people in a room together, the dynamics of people in a room together changes everything. So you can't. There's only so much you can prepare for. So I think you're exactly right.
Yeah, and if you look at people who are very skilled at those things, the way that they learn. I'm thinking now of people who face very emotionally challenging situations. I was inspired by how actors learn, how musicians learn to play their instruments, how athletes learn. I mean, sometimes I'll watch like a bowl game and I'm thinking that quarterback is 20, 21 years old and there might be millions of people watching and he knows that many people are watching and yet he's calm. And how does that happen? It's because the people who learn this way, you learn from starting from very basics and you build on the basics and you build and build and build. And when you start learning piano, you learn to play a scale. At the beginning, it's very mechanical. Put your thumb on this key, put your finger on that key, press them like this, the same each time. And it sounds very mechanical, but something happens, and everyone who's ever gotten on a Carnegie Hall stage has gone through this process where it goes from mechanical to suddenly a free expression. Suddenly, it takes years and years of practice. Right. Same with actors, is that most people, when you put them up on stage or in front of a camera, they get very wooden or stiff, or you can tell that they're not trained. And yet, when you give them these exercises, starting from basics, then moving up to intermediate and then to advanced. I mean, I don't know about you, but when to me, it's like Daniel Day-Lewis as Lincoln was. I'm looking at Lincoln. He is that person.
Right.
And I've took how we teach those fields, and instead of teaching exercises in football or exercises in sports or musical instrument or acting or singing, I took practices from leadership that we do in business. And not just business, it's leadership. Leadership can be nonprofits. Leadership can be in the military. Leadership can be politics, organizational. But it's also how you are with your family, your husband, your wife, your kids. And I took things that are important there, like how to speak authentically, how to get people to feel comfortable sharing with you what their emotions are so that you can motivate them for the reasons they want to be motivated, not authority. And the students, the results are they're like, I didn't know I could learn this, and it's incredibly important. I want to learn more this way.
Right. And as a lifelong learner, and as you've kind of been inside entrepreneurship, at its core, what are some things that you've kind of picked up along the way that have been helpful, and maybe for some of the listeners who are entrepreneurs or wantrepreneurs or sidepreneurs, what are some tips that you may offer? And I know it's kind of a general question because everybody has a different situation, but there may be some things that you could offer people who are probably just kind of starting out or about to start out.
Well, maybe the most valuable mental model that has guided me or has motivated me, and I didn't have this originally. I originally thought you had to be born a leader. Like, I look at Martin Luther King and I'm thinking that guy must have been born that way. You can't teach someone to talk that way. I'm thinking now of him being, the I Have a Dream speech or something like that. Okay, so I've changed that view. My view now is that that everybody, no matter how well they lead or whatever they do, they're not superhuman. They're human just like you, and they have the same emotional system. And if someone has a skill, if someone's done something that you wish that you could do, I used to think, well, they were just born that way. Now I think, well, they must have practiced something. Some experience developed that skill in them. And if I can replicate that experience, then I will develop that skill as well. And to me, that's a very empowering feeling. My whole course is based on having created a set of exercises like that. And if anything, I want the biggest lesson that people learn is that even after learning my skills, that, it's not like read my book, do the exercises, and you'll become Nelson Mandela. It takes practice and practice. But hopefully you say, anything someone else was able to learn, I will be able to learn too. Anything else that someone can do, they had to learn it. If they could learn it, I can learn it. And it may take time. It may take practice. You may not want to. If you don't want to, that's fine. But if you want to, then you can. I'm not saying you can fly, but if someone else could do something, you can do it. And okay, there are few that are the best in the world. Like I won't be able to run as fast as Usain Bolt. I'm 45 years old. If I started, but I can run as fast as I possibly can, and that will get me the same emotional reward of knowing that I've reached my pinnacle. I've reached my full potential.
Right.
So I hope that wasn't too long of an answer.
No, not at all. And I think that's really powerful because a lot of people sell themselves short and say, well, I can't be a good leader, or I'll never be a leader like that, or I won't be a leader at all, because just kind of what you mentioned earlier is there's this idea that you're either born a leader or you're not. And so people will sell themselves short and just think, well, I don't have the skills. I never learned that, so I guess I'm not a leader. I think it needs to be innate. And in what you're saying, it's not innate. It's something that you can learn through experience. And if you apply yourself, then you can do it. But a lot of people, they don't even start that journey because of these false beliefs. And to be able to jump in there and learn those skills, which most people can, and to be able to apply them and just practice and be consistent with it. And, and not even just start a little bit and then stop and go, well, I don't think it's for me. No, you need to jump in and you need to experience it for an extended period of time until you get it really as part of kind of who you are in your mindset.
Yeah, and it's not that everyone can be a great world leader, but that's not, not everyone. You have to find a match for what your skills are. So the example I often give is like General Patton was a great general for leading tanks into battle, and he's a great leader in that, at that. And Oprah Winfrey is great at talk shows, and she is an amazing leader herself. I don't know how well Oprah Winfrey could lead tanks into battle, and I don't know how well George Patton would do a talk show. I think it would be kind of funny to see them try each other's thing. But so I'm not saying you can do anything someone else can do, but you can do for yourself what they did for themselves.
Right, in your own domain.
Now, finding out what actually will develop those skills is a big challenge, because that might not be obvious. You can't just look at a great leader and say, well, you can't necessarily reverse engineer what got them to there. Something did, and that might be hard. It took me years to figure out a set of exercises that would get a solid foundation for leadership. It takes a lot of time. And I mean, that's why I get coaching. A lot of people get coaching. It's like the coaches who have experience can help with things like that.
Right. And I think that's another great tip right there, is to get a coach, get someone to help you. It's one thing to, find a book or application that can teach you the skills, but it's another to have a coach who can hold you accountable. And I think that's a big part. Wouldn't you agree? The accountability that a coach can, and also give you that real life feedback, that honest feedback.
Yeah, I think that you're the one person in the world that you cannot see from someone else's eyes, and everyone else sees you from someone else's eyes. So a coach, I think of a coach as being a mirror, someone who, an effective coach says, here's what I hear you saying. And over time they can say, you said you're going to do X and you didn't. It's up to you if you don't want to do it, but I'm here to tell you, you said, if you let your standards slide, it's really easy. Oh man, it's so easy to say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then you do X and Y and you're like, oh, I did a lot. A coach will say, you did say you were going to do Z.
They're not going to let you.
So that's useful.
A good coach is not going to let you quit early and get away with anything if they're truly helping you. So, yeah.
And hopefully their bias is not toward honesty and toward open feedback, as opposed to, even your mom has certain biases.
Oh, sure.
Your boss is certainly going to have certain biases. So a coach, an effective coach, and I'm pretty sure that I haven't done this research, but I think there's a high correlation between how well people achieve and having a coach, because Michael Jordan had a coach, Tiger Woods has a coach.
Yeah.
People get it backward. They think it's a weakness. It's like, on the contrary.
No, well, the most successful people in the world have coaches. And, as a mental skills coach with professional motocross athletes, I had a conversation with one of my clients the other day, and I said, look, I'm probably one of the only people in your life who is totally neutral in what you're doing. I'm not part of your team who has an interest on you, doing this or doing that. And I'm not a sponsor, and I'm not a family member. and I'm not one of your close friends. And so I said, I'm probably the only person who is genuinely neutral and can give you honest feedback more so than anyone else. And that's pretty powerful for them to have that. So, and a coach that's, helping someone to become a leader or a better leader, that's really important, is to have that for them to be that neutral third party. So, but it sounds like you've been interested in entrepreneurship for quite a while. When did you first realize that you were interested in it and maybe even wanted to be an entrepreneur?
So entrepreneurship was a very lucky break for me. When I was getting my PhD, I went in to get it because I loved physics, and I still love physics, but the practice of physics in the late 20th century, in the 90s when I was in school, it's not what it was decades before. It used to be that you could do research, you would like build a tool and you could measure particles with it. And by the time I was in school, the materials, to do an experiment was like dozens of countries, tens of thousands of people, billions and billions of dollars. And you can't just for a graduate student, it's basically a lot of debugging and working for years for data that will come much, much later. So the life of a researcher I didn't enjoy it. And so I felt trapped. I felt like I could either keep doing what I was doing, but I didn't want to do that. And what alternative did I have? The only thing that people with PhDs in physics generally go to do, it would be, I could work in industry and do something military industrial. I didn't like that. Or I could go to Wall Street. I could make a lot of money, but I didn't want to, the lifestyle wasn't interesting to me. And some friends were talking about, and we started talking about, just talking over beers, we talked about starting a company, and I had really no idea what entrepreneurship meant. I knew it was starting a company, but I had an idea for the technology that we ended up patenting and going to market with. And I didn't know if I was going to leave physics. So I was kind of doing both at the same time. And I was years into it by the time I realized that I really, I want to go all in on this. And it was one of my big lucky breaks. I've since spoken to a lot of science PhD candidates, and I talked to them about how a lot of them feel trapped. A lot of them feel like I'm going in this for one thing and the jobs aren't available or the research isn't panning out the way I like. And I point out to them how all these entrepreneurs that they all know about, Elon Musk and Zuckerberg and Michael Dell and people like that. And I say, isn't it, these guys have the world at their fingertips. They have so many options available to them. And they see that. And I say, isn't that weird that they have less education, but more options? Mm-hmm. Isn't that the opposite of what an education is for? Mm-hmm. So I learned it. I got very lucky in that sense that I had friends who were pursuing a field that ended up being what I loved, and I wouldn't have known to get into it otherwise.
Well, did you have people around you who said, Josh, what are you doing? You have a PhD in astrophysics, and why are you going down this other road? Did you kind of get some people who question you along the way?
I don't think so. I kept it pretty close to the vest for a while because we had patents and we had to have non-disclosure agreements. And so I didn't really tell people about it. And I definitely didn't tell people in school because if it didn't pan out, I wanted to have a safety net. So I didn't tell them I was leaving. And I didn't know how the department would like it. And then by the time I was more open about it, we had some pretty big successes. The idea was to put these displays on the walls of subway tunnels. And when the train goes by, it looks like there's a movie screen outside the subway car window. And it looks really cool. And by the time we were telling people about it, after the patents had been filed, the technology was really, first of all, we had to meet fire codes and all the safety regulations and stuff like that. But we built these giant displays because you have to make them really long. And people were like, wow, you've really done something there. And people expected success by that point because I didn't tell them about the early stages.
Got it, yeah. Well, that's good. And it's an amazing journey that you've been on. And, one thing that often I ask my guests is, what, looking back in your life, we can often see kind of patterns of how we kind of ended up where we are today. And I'm always curious about messages that people received growing up about money and finances. You know, while you were a child and growing up in your family, did you ever have a discussion about, you know, either the importance of money or how to make money or how to manage it or any of that?
You know, this is something that I think has held me back, is that that wasn't something that we really covered much growing up. We had allowances, and allowances were, you know, we were probably a little bit lower on average than my peers would get. And I, there was one time when my parents assigned each task would get a certain amount of money. So instead of having to do chores around the house as one separate thing and getting an allowance as another thing, they said, all right, every kid gets their allowance, and it's based on, you have to, you know, Josh, you have to vacuum, and your sister has to do laundry, or whatever. All the tasks were divided up and certain money was attached. And so one time I felt like, oh, I don't need the money, so I'm not going to do the chore. And they got really angry. And I felt like, I didn't make the rules. It's your rules. I'm playing by your rules. And they didn't like that.
That's great. Yeah, and I talked to so many people who never really had that conversation with anyone growing up. It's almost like marriage, you know. It was just kind of expect that you know how it would work out and how to make it work, and so we're kind of left. Many of us are blind on that, and so I'm always curious about, you know, what your viewpoint has been, you know, early on, and a lot of people were just kind of like, well, I kind of saw my parents how that maybe they managed money or you know, didn't have a lot or you know, gave me chores and stuff. But you know, since you've been working you know, as a professional and I mean, you have ton of experience and then, you know, now going out on your own and doing your own thing, and it's got to be stressful at times. And you know, what's been maybe the most stressful moment, you know, that you've had recently, you know, mentally, and you know, kind of, you know, how did you cope with that and get through
Man, the interviewers always like to make me cry.
it? No, I don't want to make you cry.
I mean, those stressful periods that is what entrepreneurship is about. I mean, it's not the only thing, and it's not, you know, it's not entrepreneurship and leadership aren't the only places to get those, but getting through those times I mean, there's a few that come to mind, and there was probably the big one was when it was the early 2000s. So and I know you said recent, but this one is just towers over.
Sure.
And we'd gotten funding for a certain point, and then the recession hit. So, and then 9/11 hit. So it was very difficult to get into the subway tunnels. You know, all sorts of safety things that were never there before were there. And our debut advertiser, Coca-Cola, they just pulled all their advertising for the United States for a long time. And so here I had this company that was depending on revenues and investment, and the revenue market dried up and the investment market dried up. So we were on fumes. And one of the big reasons why I value social and emotional skills now is that, you know, we were running out of money, but that wasn't the issue. That was the symptom. The issue was that the other co-founder and I, we didn't know how to manage teams in difficult situations. And so, you know, the staff is, you know, they're sending their resumes out, and we're trying to get them to work. And meanwhile, me and the other co-founder, we also don't know how to get along with each other. And so we were feuding, and he was taking time off. And because of the feud, the staff felt like they weren't being paid. I can't say exactly how they felt, but unbeknownst to me, one day they decided to show me and the other co-founder that they were not, I don't know exactly what they were trying to show, but you know, you guys, there's us too. And so they decided not to come in one day.
Wow.
So I came into the office. Matt, the other co-founder, wasn't coming in because he was taking time off. And the staff didn't come in. So I came into an office that I expected to be filled with people. No one's there. And the entire day I'm in the office by myself. I can't get any work done. I can't really leave because looking back, it wouldn't matter if I was there or not. And I just cried.
Wow.
I felt like, there's absolutely nothing I can do anymore. And I can't conjure up people out of nothing. I don't know where they are. I don't know what's going on. And I felt as helpless as a baby. And on something that I'd worked years and years and given everything I had to. And I felt like whatever it looked like to everyone else, I felt like I was trying to create a project for, like, yeah, I expected to get rich, but it wasn't just me. I felt like it was a team thing. And suddenly I was like, I guess not. I guess I've misread a lot of things. And when people talk about failure now, people throw that term around so much. It's like they brag about it and stuff. And you don't wish that on anyone. It's really, I mean, you have to go through things like that to grow and learn. I can see why people wouldn't want to do it.
Absolutely.
But coming through it is, I didn't die, and not a lot since then has been that bad. Mm-hmm. And once you've been there, then you're like, oh, it's not going to, I've handled worse.
Right. Well, it sounds like, such an extremely emotional time, and everything must have felt like it was just imploding in on you. And then feeling abandoned. You come into work and even your employees are like making a stand. We're not doing this anymore. We're not going to be a part of this train. And so, you probably thought before that happened that you had enough stressors that you could handle. And then when your employees basically, turn their backs on you and walk out, that must have been such a lonely feeling at that time. And so how did you finally bounce back mentally? Like, how did you right the ship? Not necessarily what you did as far as your tactics and, to get the company, either, back up or whatnot, but, mentally, how did you turn yourself around? Because it must have really kind of took you down into the gutters, I can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't happen right away. I was down there for a while, and, a few things. I would talk to other people who, every now and then I'd talk to someone and they would be very understanding. And it finally dawned on me, they had been through something like that too. Mm. And one of the big lessons I've learned, I don't know, I can't state this as like a scientific truth, but people who suck at things tell you how great they are. People who are awesome at things tell you about the disasters they went through to get there.
Wow.
Yes. And those stories are usually much more interesting. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I realized that a lot of the people that I looked up to, the more I went below the surface, I found out of the painful experiences that they had. And maybe it's a bit of misery-loving company, or maybe it's a bit that you learn through community. And after a while, I started realizing it's not just me. These things happen, mm-hmm. and you can learn from it. And, I got squeezed out. The investors said, for us to put more money in, then we're going to put in our CEO, and that means you're out. And that there wasn't a whole lot I could do about that. It was either accept that or watch it all go away completely. Mm-hmm. And so then I felt like, that was like another low of just not being welcomed back into the office. And I can only say this now because, one of the one of the main applications at first of the skills that I learned with the MBA was to restore my relationships with the company, and the company's still around. Mm-hmm. So it did eke it out, and those relationships are strong again. But after I was out, and then I still have to pay my mortgage, and I still have to buy food. So it's not like you can take time to rest. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, you get back in there and start, working. I worked at a friend's company for a while, and then seeing that working on a project that I didn't feel that sense of ownership. I don't have to start the company, but I do need the difference between having a sense of ownership of what you work on and not having that sense of ownership is pretty big.
Right.
And so that it gave me motivation to start new projects and start new companies. And I started getting back into that over time of developing ideas and sharing them with people.
So it helped you get back on your feet, basically. Helped you to kind of right the ship and get stable again and get everything clear in your mind and shake off the cobwebs. Almost like a football player who's taking a big hit. It takes a moment to kind of clear your head. And, you might have to step off the field for a moment and get some oxygen, get a drink of water, and do some burpees and then get back out there, so to speak.
Exactly. Just over a longer time period.
Uh-huh.
Maybe someone who took, maybe you have a big loss towards the end of the season. You got the off season to have to dwell in it.
Yeah. But it like you said, it's a lesson learned, and it only makes you that much stronger. And so shifting from one of the most traumatic things that's happened to you business wise, let's transition into what's been one of the most fulfilling moments in your journey.
Yeah, so that's also easy, and this is one of the big things that came out of this was recognizing how important learning through experiences. There is no lecture, there's no video or book that you can watch that will give you that kind of experience, that will give you what you learn from an experience like that. And so when I teach with giving people experiences, I don't put them through that, but I put them through smaller scales of things like that. One of the things you have to do is you have to present a lot of things in my courses, and a lot of students have never had to present that much, and they're really freaked out about it, but they don't die, and then they come back and they make it slightly improve the next time, and so on. And so by far the most fulfilling thing is when the students come back and they say, I've learned something I never believed I could have. Like one of my students, this is an undergrad, worked at this major multinational, and it was his side job. I don't know how many hours a week he worked, but it wasn't, full time. And he had the highest position in the corporation that someone without a college degree could have. So in my class, he was doing his homework. My exercises are always do things with people around you. I tell you specific exercises to do, and you practice with the people around you. So he would do the practices. He would do the exercises with his coworkers, and they spontaneously created a new position at the company to promote him in order to make sure that he stayed there, just because he was doing the homework for my class.
Wow.
Like
Well,
he
that's
just
powerful.
got promoted. I mean, they had to make a position for him.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and that
you
sort
probably,
of thing
you
is
can't put a dollar on that.
exactly.
It's
That's the fulfillment in that is like that. So when I decided to write a book, a book is like you got to sit there and your shoulders hurt and your back hurts because you're sitting there for so long, and you have to say no to everything because no one's going to write it except you. And something like that will sustain you for 6 months of that, no problem. And I have a lot of that. So it's, that motivation for me to get through the difficult times of writing is like, all I have to do is think of, if I teach a course, I can get a dozen people or a couple dozen people learning this stuff at a time. But if I make my course online, which I've done, and if I make a book available, then it's, many more people can get that. And for me, the success of the book is, I hope I sell a lot of books, but it's really, do people do the exercises and use the experiences from the exercises to improve their lives? And if that happens, then on a big scale, beyond a couple dozen people, the fulfillment from that, like I really think my greatest fulfillment, I believe, is in the future.
Wow. Well, it sounds like, those who are benefiting from, your actual, skills and practice and sharing with them and helping them to develop is that's your rocket fuel, that keeps you going. And that's so powerful. And that's great. Well, Josh, we've come to the end of the show, and you've been a fantastic guest and a great story, and you didn't cry. So that
not on the outside. Yeah.
I'm sure it was a vulnerable moment, and I appreciate you sharing that. But what I'd like you to do right now is just kind of share with the audience, some your contact information. Where can they find you and maybe even follow you on social media?
Sure. I mean, the first thing I have to mention is my book. So the book comes out in a couple of weeks, so probably in the past for people listening, but it's called Leadership Step by Step. It'll be available in all the usual places. It's pre-order on Amazon right now. And my personal blog is joshuaspodek.com. And that's, mostly, it's talking about burpees and cold showers, and also my views on the world from the leadership perspective I have. Then there's my course site, spodekacademy.com. And that's where you can take my online courses. And the book has all the exercises. The courses have more than the book because they have the online forum, so that when you do it there, you post your reflections after each exercise, and you can learn from each other, and there's interaction on there. And even people have met online through the forum that have then met in person and started doing business together. So there's that community aspect to it. And then on Twitter, I'm Spodek, Spodek. And then to find me online, there's not a lot of Spodeks in the world. So if you just search on me, you can find lots of stuff. There's lots of press and things like that.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And you've provided a tremendous value today on this show. And I'm sure for people to go and find you and get your book and go on your website, they're going to continue to get value. And so I appreciate your time. It has been an honor and a privilege to speak with you. And I hope to stay in touch and continue to follow you on your journey, Josh.
Well, I'm honored myself and I'm flattered. So I thank you. And I hope that, like with the book, my success I measure by how many people how many people I can help to improve their lives in some way.
Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful. You have a great evening. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Take care, Josh.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlaskus.com.